I was still wearing my funeral clothes when Lauren called me into her office to tell me I was being let go for performance issues. The black dress I'd bought specifically for Dad's service hung loose on my frame. I'd lost 12 pounds in the 3 weeks since his heart attack. As she spoke about my lack of focus and inability to meet expectations, I noticed a vacation photo on her desk. Her, smiling on a beach somewhere tropical, taken the same week I was planning my father's funeral. I just don't think you're committed enough to this position anymore, Ellie. Lauren folded her hands on her desk, her French manicure catching the fluorescent light. Your mind has been elsewhere for weeks now. The team needs someone who can be fully present. I sat silently, my grief temporarily replaced by a wave of disbelief so intense it made my fingertips tingle. 3 years at this company. 3 years of early mornings, late nights, working through weekends and postponed vacations. 3 years of my life poured into spreadsheets and presentations and client meetings. And now I was being discarded because I'd taken 2 weeks to bury my father and settle his affairs. I understand you've been through a difficult time, Lauren continued, not sounding like she understood at all. But Henderson and Mitchell is a results-driven environment. We simply can't afford to carry team members who aren't contributing at 100%. I wanted to remind her that before my father's sudden death, I'd never once missed a deadline, that I'd trained half the junior staff in our department, that I'd brought in the Westlake account, our biggest client to date, through my personal connection. Instead, I just nodded, a strange calm settling over me. You'll need to clear out your desk today. HR will email you information about your final paycheck and continuing health coverage options. Lauren slid a manila folder across the desk. I'll need your key card and parking pass before you leave. Of course, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. I reached into my purse and placed my key card on her desk. The parking pass is on my windshield. Perfect. Lauren stood, signaling the end of our meeting. I wish you all the best, Ellie. As I walked back to my desk, I felt eyes on me. Word traveled fast in our open-plan office. Coworkers quickly looked away when I glanced in their direction, suddenly fascinated by their computer screens. Only May, my closest work friend, had the courage to approach as I began emptying my desk drawers into a cardboard box someone had already placed there. This is completely unfair, she whispered, helping me take down the photos from my cubicle wall. One was of Dad and me at my college graduation, his arm around my shoulders, face beaming with pride. Everyone knows Lauren's just doing this because you made her look bad at the Drummond presentation. What do you mean? I carefully wrapped the frame in tissue paper. She told the clients you were out for personal reasons when they specifically asked for you. Then Mark accidentally mentioned your dad had passed away, and they were horrified that she'd made you sound like you were just taking time off. They sent flowers to your house, remember? Lauren got reprimanded by Douglas for mishandling the situation. This was news to me. The flowers had arrived with a generic sympathy card signed by the whole Drummond team. I'd assumed it was just a nice gesture. I didn't know that, I said, placing my coffee mug in the box. It was a Father's Day gift to Dad that I'd taken after cleaning out his apartment. World's best dad in faded letters, a chip on the rim where he dropped it years ago and superglued it back together. It's retaliation, Ellie. You should fight this. I shook my head. I don't have the energy for a battle right now, May. But your performance reviews have always been stellar. You have documentation. This is wrongful termination. I closed my eyes briefly, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. Dad's medical bills that had arrived yesterday. The half-packed apartment I still needed to clear out. The funeral costs I'd put on my credit card. Maybe you're right, I said finally. Let me think about it. 40 minutes later, I carried my box through the parking garage, the concrete echoing with each step. I placed it in my trunk, next to a bag of Dad's clothes I still needed to donate. As I slid into the driver's seat, My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "How was your first day back, sweetheart?" I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. My parents had divorced when I was 12, but they'd remained on good terms. Mom had flown in for the funeral, had helped me with arrangements, had held my hand at the service. She'd only returned to Phoenix 3 days ago, reluctant to leave me alone. I couldn't tell her I'd been fired. Not yet. Not when she was still worried about me being on my own. "Fine," I texted back. "Just tired. Talk tomorrow." 3 dots appeared then. "Of course. Love you. Dad would be proud of you for being so strong." I dropped my phone into the passenger seat and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, finally allowing the tears to come. I cried until my throat hurt, until my eyes burned, until the security guard tapped on my window to ask if I was okay. "Yes," I lied, wiping my face. "Just heading out." At home, I left the box in my car and walked straight to my kitchen, where I poured a glass of wine and carried it to my couch. I hadn't been much of a drinker before Dad died. Now the ritual of pouring a glass helped mark the transition from one part of the day to the next. It gave me something to do with my hands. I pulled my laptop toward me, intending to update my resume, but instead found myself typing wrongful termination after bereavement into the search bar. Result after result confirmed what May had suggested. I had grounds for a complaint, possibly even a lawsuit. My phone rang. May's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," I answered. "I talked to James in HR," she said without preamble. He was really disturbed by what happened. Said he had no idea Lauren was planning to terminate you today. Isn't HR supposed to be involved in all terminations? I took a sip of wine. Exactly. Lauren bypassed protocol. James wants you to come in tomorrow to discuss the situation. I hesitated. The thought of walking back into that office so soon made my stomach clench. "I don't know, May." "Please, Ellie, at least hear what he has to say. Lauren's done this before. Pushed people out when they've made her look bad. No one's ever fought back." I thought about the manila folder Lauren had given me, still unopened in my car, about the beach photo on her desk, about sitting in a funeral home picking out a casket while she sipped cocktails under an umbrella. "What time?" I finally asked. 10 o'clock. I already told him you'd be there. After hanging up, I retrieved the box from my car, along with the manila folder. Inside was a termination letter citing failure to meet performance standards and excessive absenteeism as the reasons for my dismissal. Attached was a severance agreement offering 1 month's salary in exchange for waiving my right to pursue any claims against Henderson and Mitchell. I placed the documents on my coffee table and stared at them until my vision blurred. Dad's voice echoed in my memory. "Never let anyone make you feel small, Eleanor. You stand your ground when you know you're right." He'd been a union electrician for 40 years, had participated in 2 strikes, had filed grievances when management tried to cut corners on safety. He'd taught me to speak up, to document everything, to know my rights. I picked up my phone and took photos of the termination letter and severance agreement. Then I opened my email and found the digital copy of my last performance review from just 3 months ago. Exceeds expectations was checked in nearly every category. Lauren's own comments praised my exceptional client relations and outstanding work ethic. I forwarded the review to my personal email, then began searching for other documentation I might need. Old emails thanking me for staying late. Notes from clients expressing their appreciation for my work. The official company bereavement policy, which stated employees were entitled to 5 paid days off for the death of an immediate family member, with the option to use vacation time or unpaid leave for additional days as needed. By midnight, I had a folder of evidence contradicting everything in Lauren's termination letter. I also had a clearer picture of what had happened. 2 weeks after Dad died, while I was still on bereavement leave, Lauren had emailed me asking when I'd return. I'd responded that I needed 1 more week to handle Dad's affairs as his only child. She'd replied curtly that she understood, but Hoped I could wrap things up quickly as my absence was creating challenges for the team. I'd come back after exactly 1 more week, still raw with grief but determined to throw myself into work as a distraction. But grief doesn't operate on a schedule. I'd found myself zoning out during meetings, forgetting small details, needing things repeated. Nothing major, no missed deadlines or botched projects, just the normal fog of early grief. I'd been back only 3 days before today's termination. 3 days, not even a full week to readjust. As I compiled my documentation, a new emotion began to surface through my grief and shock. Anger. Pure, clarifying anger that burned away the fog and sharpened my focus for the first time since Dad's death. Lauren hadn't just fired me unfairly. She'd exploited my most vulnerable moment to get rid of me because I'd inadvertently embarrassed her. She'd calculated that in my grief-stricken state, I wouldn't have the emotional energy to fight back. She'd miscalculated. I closed my laptop and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, I would walk back into Henderson and Mitchell with my head held high. I would meet with James from HR. I would calmly present my evidence. And I would watch Lauren try to explain why she'd fired a bereaved daughter for being too distracted 3 days after returning from her father's funeral. The ghost of a smile touched my lips for the first time in weeks as I imagined Lauren's face when she realized her mistake. Dad would have loved this. He'd always said the quickest way to see someone's true character was to watch how they handled being caught in a lie. Tomorrow, I'd get to see Lauren's true character on full display. I slept soundly that night for the first time since Dad died. The next morning, I dressed with purpose, the gray pantsuit Dad had helped me pick out for my first big client presentation, a silk blouse in his favorite shade of blue. I pulled my hair back neatly, applied makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes, and put on the small sapphire earrings he'd given me for my 30th birthday last year. "For my gem of a daughter," he'd said, eyes crinkling at his own corny joke. As I drove to the office, I felt his presence beside me, almost as if he were riding shotgun like he used to when teaching me to drive. His voice seemed to whisper encouragement. "You've got this, Ellie girl. Show them what you're made of." I parked in the visitor section, noting with grim amusement that my employee parking pass had already been removed from my windshield. When I reached the lobby, May was waiting for me, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. "James is ready whenever you are," she said, handing me a visitor badge. "Lauren's in a client meeting off-site until 11:30. "Perfect," I replied, clipping the badge to my jacket. "That gives us plenty of time." As we rode the elevator to the 14th floor, May squeezed my arm. "How are you holding up?" I considered the question. Yesterday, I'd been shattered. Today, I felt a strange sense of clarity, as if Dad's death and Lauren's betrayal had stripped away all pretense and left only truth behind. "I'm okay," I said. "Better than yesterday." It wasn't a lie. "You look good," May said. "Strong." "I feel strong," I realized as I said it. Dad wouldn't want me wallowing. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out with my shoulders back and head high. As we walked through the office, toward the HR department, conversations halted. Eyes followed our progress. Someone whispered, "Is that Ellie?" James was waiting in the small conference room, a stack of papers in front of him. He stood when we entered, extending his hand. "Ellie, thank you for coming in. I can't tell you how concerned I was when May told me what happened." "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," I said, taking a seat across from him. I placed my own folder on the table. "I've brought some documentation I think you should see." For the next hour, I methodically presented my case. The stellar performance reviews, the emails showing my consistent work quality, the company bereavement policy that I'd followed to the letter, the timing of my termination, just 3 days after returning from approved leave, the fact that Lauren had bypassed HR protocols for termination. James took notes, his expression growing increasingly troubled. When I showed him the termination letter with its false claims about my performance and attendance, he shook his head. "This is highly concerning," he said finally. Lauren should have consulted with HR before taking any action, especially given the circumstances of your bereavement. The claims in this letter don't align with your documented performance history. No, I agreed. They don't. I'd like to bring Douglas into this conversation, if that's all right with you. As department head, he should be aware of the situation. Of course, I said, feeling a flutter of nervousness but pushing it aside. Douglas Chen was the executive vice president and Lauren's direct supervisor. I'd always found him fair but intimidating. While James stepped out to call Douglas, May gave me an encouraging smile. "You're killing it," she whispered. "So calm and professional." "I don't feel calm inside," I admitted. "But Dad always said never let them see you sweat." "Your dad sounds like he was a wise man." "The wisest," I agreed, throat tightening. "He would have known exactly what to do in this situation." "I think you're doing exactly what he would have wanted," May said gently. Before I could respond, the door opened. James returned with Douglas, whose usually impassive face showed clear concern. He nodded at me as he took a seat. "Ellie, I'm very sorry about your father," he said, "and I apologize that you're having to deal with this situation during such a difficult time." "Thank you," I said simply. "James has briefed me on the basics. I'd like to hear your perspective directly if you don't mind going through it again." So I did, laying out the timeline once more. Dad's sudden heart attack, the bereavement leave, the approved extension to handle his affairs, my return to work, the fog of grief that had followed me back to the office, and finally Lauren's abrupt termination meeting after just 3 days back, with claims that contradicted my documented work history. Douglas listened without interrupting, his expression grave. When I finished, he asked to see my documentation. I handed him my folder, and he reviewed each item carefully. "This is unacceptable," he said finally. "Completely unacceptable. James, what time is Lauren expected back in the office?" James checked his watch. "Her meeting ends at 11:30. She should be back around 11:45. "Good. Please ask her to come directly to this conference room when she returns." Douglas turned back to me. "Ellie, would you be willing to stay until then? I'd like to resolve this immediately." I nodded, heart pounding. "Yes, I can stay." "Excellent. And May, thank you for bringing this to HR's attention. But I'll need you to return to your regular duties now." May squeezed my shoulder as she stood to leave. "Text me," she whispered. After she left, Douglas leaned forward. "Henderson and Mitchell has a clear bereavement policy for a reason. We understand that grief affects performance in the short term. That's expected and accounted for. What Lauren did goes against both our policies and our values as a company." I swallowed hard. "What happens now?" "Now," Douglas said, "we wait for Lauren to arrive, and then she can explain herself." We sat in silence for nearly 20 minutes, Douglas reviewing my documentation more thoroughly while James made hushed phone calls in the corner. I tried to keep my breathing steady, rehearsing what I'd say when Lauren walked in. I needed to stay composed, professional, to not let the hurt and anger overwhelm my purpose. At precisely 11:47, the conference room door opened. Lauren stepped in, her face arranged in its usual expression of pleasant efficiency. That expression faltered when she saw me sitting beside Douglas. "What's this about?" she asked, her gaze darting between us. "Please sit down, Lauren," Douglas said, his tone neutral but firm. She took the seat farthest from me, setting her leather portfolio on the table with deliberate precision. "I was told there was an urgent matter requiring my attention." "There is," Douglas confirmed. "We're here to discuss Ellie's termination yesterday." Lauren's posture stiffened. "I wasn't aware that required further discussion. The paperwork has been filed." "Without HR's involvement," James pointed out quietly. "It was a straightforward performance issue," Lauren said, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "I didn't think it required special handling." Douglas slid my performance review across the table. This is from 3 months ago. You rated Ellie as exceeding expectations in nearly every category. Lauren barely glanced at it. That was before her extended absence. Her approved bereavement leave, Douglas corrected, following the death of her father. Yes, of course, Lauren said, having the grace to look momentarily abashed. And that's completely understandable. But since returning, Ellie has been distracted, unfocused. The team needs reliable contributors. I'd been back 3 days, I said, speaking directly to Lauren for the first time. My voice came out steadier than I expected. 3 days after burying my father. Lauren shifted uncomfortably. I understand it was a difficult time for you. Do you? I interrupted, surprised by my own boldness. Because you were on vacation in Maui when my father died. You sent a text message that said, and I quote, "So sorry for your loss. Take the time you need within reason." Then you emailed me 3 times during the funeral week asking about the Westlake project. Lauren's cheeks flushed. The Westlake timeline was critical. May handled it, I continued. She copied you on every email. The deadline was met. No balls were dropped. Douglas held up a hand. Let's back up. Lauren, according to our records, Ellie took 5 days of bereavement leave, which is our standard policy for immediate family members. She then requested and was approved for 5 additional days of vacation time to settle her father's affairs, as she is his only living child. She returned to work exactly as scheduled on Monday. Yes, but 3 days later, you terminated her employment citing performance issues and excessive absenteeism. Yet there is no documentation of performance concerns, no written warnings, and the absenteeism claim directly contradicts our own approved leave record. Lauren's expression hardened. Documented warnings aren't always necessary for termination. Henderson and Mitchell is an at-will employer. That's technically correct, James interjected, but we have protocols in place to protect both the company and our employees. Terminating someone 3 days after they return from bereavement leave without consulting HR creates potential legal exposure. The room fell silent. Lauren stared at her portfolio, a muscle twitching in her jaw. There's also the matter of the Drummond presentation, Douglas said finally. Lauren's head snapped up. What about it? I understand there was some confusion regarding Ellie's absence. Lauren's eyes darted to me accusingly. I kept my expression neutral. Mark mentioned that Ellie's father had passed away, Douglas continued. The clients were quite surprised, as they'd been told Ellie was out for personal reasons and would be back soon. I was trying to be discreet, Lauren said quickly. I didn't think Ellie would want her personal tragedy broadcast to clients. That's thoughtful, Douglas acknowledged. But when they learned the truth, they were concerned that we might be insensitive to staff during difficult times. That's not the impression we want to give our clients. I see. Lauren's voice had gone cold. So this is about client perception. This is about doing the right thing, Douglas corrected. Henderson and Mitchell prides itself on being a supportive workplace. What happened yesterday directly contradicts our values and policies. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Discreetly, I checked it under the table. A text from May. How's it going? Do you need backup? I silenced the phone and returned my attention to the conversation. What exactly are you suggesting? Lauren was asking. I'm not suggesting anything, Douglas replied. I'm telling you that Ellie's termination is being reversed effective immediately. She will be reinstated with full back pay and benefits. My breath caught. I hadn't dared hope for such a definitive outcome so quickly. Lauren's face went pale. Reversed? But I've already redistributed her accounts. I've told the team. Then you'll need to untell them, Douglas said simply. This isn't a request, Lauren. It's a corrective action. And if I refuse? Lauren's voice had dropped to a near whisper. Then we would need to discuss your future with the company. Douglas's tone left no room for misinterpretation. The reality of the situation seemed to finally hit Lauren. Her carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing the panic beneath. This is absurd. I was addressing a legitimate performance concern. 3 days after Ellie returned from bereavement leave, James reminded her, with no documentation, no consultation with HR, and contradicting her stellar performance history. People made allowances for her because they felt sorry for her, Lauren snapped, composure slipping further. I was the only one willing to make the hard call. That's not true, I said quietly. You made this call because I accidentally embarrassed you in front of the Drummond team. Because Mark told them the truth about why I was out, and they sent me flowers, and Doug had to talk to you about it. This wasn't about my performance. It was retaliation. A tense silence filled the room. Lauren's face flushed dark red, then drained of color entirely. That's a serious accusation, Douglas said, turning to me. Do you have any evidence to support it? Just the timing, I admitted, and what May told me about the Drummond meeting. It's circumstantial, but concerning, James noted, especially given the timeline. Douglas studied Lauren, who sat rigid in her chair, knuckles white where she gripped her portfolio. Lauren, I'd like to speak with you privately after this meeting. For now, let's focus on resolving Ellie's situation. He turned to me. Are you willing to return to your position, Ellie? The question caught me off guard. In my focus on proving the wrongfulness of my termination, I hadn't considered whether I actually wanted my job back. Did I want to continue working under Lauren, knowing how quickly she discarded me? Did I want to return to a place where my grief had been seen as an inconvenience? Dad's voice seemed to whisper in my ear, Don't make big decisions when you're angry or hurt, Ellie girl. Sleep on it. I would like some time to consider that, I said carefully. This has been a lot to process. Douglas nodded. Of course. Take the rest of the week with pay. Let James know your decision by Monday. He slid a business card across the table. And if you'd like to discuss other positions within the company that might be a better fit going forward, my door is open. I took the card, a weight lifting from my shoulders. Options. I had options. Thank you, I said, gathering my documentation. I appreciate your handling this so quickly. I'm sorry it was necessary at all, Douglas replied. James will walk you out. As we stood, Lauren remained seated, staring at the table. I hesitated, part of me wanting to say something, whether in anger or in some strange need for closure, I wasn't sure. But there was nothing to say that hadn't already been said. I turned and followed James to the door. Ellie, Lauren called just as I reached the threshold. I paused but didn't turn around. I am sorry about your father. The words hung in the air between us. Too little and far too late. I nodded once, still facing the door, and walked out. James escorted me through the office in silence. Eyes followed us again. But this time the whispers seemed more confused than gossipy. At the elevator, he handed me a letter stating that my termination had been rescinded pending further review. For your records, he said. And truly, I am sorry this happened. Thank you for listening, I replied as the elevator doors opened. I'll be in touch by Monday. Outside, the May sunshine felt warm on my skin. I sat in my car for a long moment, processing everything that had just occurred. My phone showed 3 more texts from May, increasingly concerned. I called her instead of texting back. What happened? She answered immediately. They reversed the termination, I said, still hardly believing it. Douglas gave Lauren a very public dressing down. Oh my God, seriously? That's amazing. May's voice echoed with vindication. Are you coming back? I'm not sure yet. Douglas gave me until Monday to decide. I'm supposed to take the rest of the week off with pay. Wow. Lauren must be freaking out. Douglas never intervenes like that. He seemed Genuinely upset about the whole thing, I agreed. Offered to discuss other positions in the company if I wanted. Smart move on his part, me said. You could probably sue the pants off them if you wanted to. The thought hadn't even occurred to me, though perhaps it should have. I don't think I want that. I just wanted, I don't know, justice, I guess. Sounds like you got it. May paused. Hey, some of us are going for drinks after work to celebrate Tara's birthday. Want to join? You could fill us in on all the details. The old Ellie would have said yes immediately, eager to please, to be included, to be liked. But something had shifted in me over these past weeks. Dad's death had forced me to reevaluate what mattered. And right now, what mattered was giving myself space to breathe, to grieve, to decide what came next. Thanks, but I think I need some time to myself, I said. Rain check. Absolutely. Take care of yourself, Ellie. I'm really proud of you for standing up to Lauren. That took guts. After hanging up, I sat a while longer in the quiet of my car. For the first time since Dad died, I felt something like peace, not happiness, not even relief exactly, but a quiet certainty that I would be okay, that I could face whatever came next. I started the engine and headed not home, but to Dad's apartment. There were still boxes to pack, memories to sort through, decisions to make about what to keep and what to let go. It was painful work, but necessary, just like today had been. As I drove, I thought about what I would tell Mom when I called her later, about how Douglas had reacted, about Lauren's discomfort, about my uncertain professional future. Mom would say I should sue, would want righteous vengeance on my behalf. She'd never fully understood Dad's approach to conflict. Firm but fair, standing your ground without seeking to destroy your opponent. The goal isn't to win at all costs, Ellie, he'd told me once after resolving a dispute with a difficult neighbor. It's to restore balance, to make things right. Today felt like that. Not a victory, exactly, but a restoration of balance. At Dad's apartment, I let myself in with the key that still felt foreign on my ring. The place smelled less like him now, more like cardboard and dust. I'd been methodically working through each room, but had avoided his home office until now. Today I felt ready. The office was small but warmly furnished. A solid oak desk he'd refinished himself. Bookshelves lined with electrical code manuals and dog-eared mystery novels. A worn leather chair patched with duct tape where the arm had split years ago. Still perfectly good, he'd insist whenever I offered to buy him a new one. Just needs a little help to keep going. I sat in his chair, running my fingers over the smooth wooden desktop. The center drawer stuck slightly as I pulled it open. Inside were the usual supplies: pens, paper clips, a stapler, but also a small leather notebook I didn't recognize. I opened it to find Dad's familiar handwriting, pages filled with quotes he'd collected over the years. Some from books, some from friends, some attributed simply to life. I flipped through, smiling at notes that perfectly captured his philosophy. Near the back, a page was bookmarked with a receipt from the hardware store. The quote, written in his neat block letters, read, "The true measure of a person is how they respond when no one is looking, and how they behave toward those who can do nothing for them." Below it, in smaller writing, "For Ellie, remember this when dealing with difficult people." My vision blurred with tears, but they were different from the tears I'd shed in the parking garage yesterday. These felt cleansing rather than drowning. Dad had known. Somehow he'd known I would need this reminder. Maybe he'd noticed Lauren's behavior in the past, during the few times they'd met at company functions. Or maybe he'd just understood that everyone eventually faces people who mistake kindness for weakness. I carefully placed a notebook in my bag. Then I started sorting through his desk with renewed purpose, separating items into keep, donate, and discard piles as I'd been doing with the rest of his belongings. By evening, I'd made significant progress. The office was nearly cleared with precious mementos boxed to take home and the rest organized for donation. I ordered takeout from Dad's favorite Thai place and ate it at his kitchen counter. using his mismatched plates and faded cloth napkins. As I ate, I let my mind wander through possibilities. I could return to Henderson and Mitchell, perhaps in a different department away from Lauren. I could use this opportunity to find a new job entirely, maybe at a company with values better aligned with my own. I could even take some time off, use a portion of Dad's modest life insurance to give myself space to grieve properly before jumping back into work. For the first time since his death, these thoughts didn't fill me with anxiety. Whatever I decided, I would be okay. Dad had taught me how to stand my ground, how to face difficult situations with integrity, how to restore balance when things went wrong. My phone rang, Mom calling for our daily check-in. This time, I felt ready to tell her everything. "Hi, Mom," I answered. "Hi, sweetie. How are you holding up? Still at work?" I took a deep breath. "Actually, I have quite a story to tell you about work. Got a minute?" "For you? Always." So I told her everything, from Lauren firing me yesterday to the reversal today. Mom gasped and exclaimed at all the right moments, her indignation on my behalf both comforting and amusing. "That horrible woman!" she fumed when I finished. "Please tell me you're not going back to work for her." "I don't know yet," I admitted. "Douglas, the VP, offered to discuss other positions in the company." "Good. You shouldn't have to see her smug face every day after what she did." Mom paused. "Your father would have been so proud of how you handled this, standing up for yourself, but with dignity." "I thought a lot about what Dad would have done," I said, running my fingers over the leather notebook beside me. It helped. "He always knew exactly what to say in tough situations," Mom agreed, her voice softening with memory despite their divorce. "Wisest man I ever knew, even when he was driving me crazy." I laughed, wiping away a stray tear. "Yeah, me too." We talked a while longer about the apartment, about what furniture I might want to keep, about the upcoming memorial service Dad's union was organizing. Normal, practical conversations interspersed with moments of shared grief. It felt good. Healing. After hanging up, I walked through the apartment one more time, turning off lights and making sure windows were locked. In Dad's bedroom, I paused by the nightstand where a photo of us still stood, a fishing trip from when I was about 12, both of us sunburned and grinning, holding up a pitifully small fish as if it were a prize marlin. "I think I did okay today, Dad," I said to the empty room. "I think I made you proud." The silence that answered wasn't as painful as it had been just days ago. I could almost hear his response. "You always make me proud, Ellie girl. Always have, always will." I drove home under a sky scattered with stars, the leather notebook secure in my bag beside me. Whatever came next, whether I returned to Henderson and Mitchell or forged a completely new path, I would face it carrying the lessons Dad had taught me. Lauren had fired me for being too distracted after my father died. She'd seen my grief as a weakness, an inconvenience, something to be exploited. But in the end, that grief had given me an unexpected strength, the clarity to see situations for what they really were, the courage to stand up for myself, and the wisdom to know that some battles are worth fighting not for vengeance, but for justice. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "This is Douglas. Just wanted to check how you're doing and let you know that I'm available to talk whenever you're ready. Take all the time you need." I smiled, feeling another piece of the broken landscape inside me shift back toward equilibrium. Time, space to breathe, options for the future. These were gifts I hadn't expected from this painful day. "Thank you," I texted back. "I'll be in touch soon." Inside my apartment, I placed Dad's notebook on my bedside table. Then I opened my laptop and began typing, not a resume or a job search, but a letter to Dad. All the things I wished I'd said, all the lessons I was still learning from him even now. It wasn't a goodbye, but a reaffirmation that he remained with me, guiding me through this new, unexpected chapter of my life. Lauren had been right about one thing. I had been distracted, but not in the way she meant. I'd been distracted by grief, yes, but also by years of trying to please people who saw my dedication as something to exploit rather than appreciate. Dad's death had refocused me on what truly mattered: living with integrity, standing up for myself, and remembering that my worth wasn't determined by a job title or a boss's approval. Tomorrow would bring decisions and challenges, but tonight, for the first time since that terrible phone call about Dad's heart attack, I felt something like hope. Not happiness that would take longer to return, but the quiet certainty that I was on the right path, that I would find my way through this, that the distractions would clear, revealing a future I couldn't yet imagine, but could face with the strength Dad had helped me build. I closed my laptop and got ready for bed, tired but at peace. On my nightstand, the notebook seemed to hold silent vigil, a tangible reminder that even in death, those we love continue to guide us, continue to teach us, continue to help us find our way back to ourselves. "Good night, Dad," I whispered as I turned out the light. "Thanks for having my back today." As sleep claimed me, I could almost hear his voice, warm and certain. "Always, Ellie girl. Always."